Well, Margaret,
Yeah.
nice to meet you again, Margaret.
Nice to meet you.
And you're looking well.
Thank you.
Margaret, could I ask you, were you born in the Port Road here?
Yes, I.
And your father was Paddy Tinney?
Aye, that's right. My name was Celia.
Aye.
Celia Gallagher. Which is from Stillowford and Drumkeen.
Aye. And there are many a family of you, was there?
Of ourselves. There were three of us. Just three of Tinneys.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you know.
That was Eddie?
That
God
was
rest him.
Eddie, Charlie and myself.
And yourself, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, you know, my mummy died in 1950.
All right.
Yeah. Now,
God, she was a young woman.
I was only 10 at the time.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was tough, Margaret, in them days, you know.
I was very lucky. We had a good aunt to come to rear us. So
yeah, your aunt was a big auntie.
With daddy there now, you know.
Aye.
Over there now, you know.
Aye. Well, Margaret, you must have seen some great things in that.
Oh, there a big changes over there from being born here in the Port Road and going to school over there now. There's very big changes there now, you know, over there.
Well, you see, your father, he was a farmer.
I had done farming. He started coal in 1937.
There's a photograph, you know, of Brown's Foundry.
Aye.
It's in on Lower Main Street, and it was a man was holding a placard in front of him, and it says 1937.
Yes.
But there was one man in it that we reckon, two men we recognised. One was Sean Ruth.
Yes.
And the other was a Barney Curran from Ballymacool.
That's right, yeah, I knew Barney well even.
Did you?
Aye, yeah.
No, I didn't remember them.
Aye, yeah, well, I remember him going down to the foundry with Daddy's tea, and we over there were probably 6 or around 7 at the time, and knew Barney well, or I think Charlie knew him well.
Aye. Was there anybody else that worked that time for your father? From Letterkenny, was it?
There were a big lot, that's what you call it, but it would have been probably later years. That Cyril Coyle was out in the home. He worked for Daddy Coyle from the High Road.
Right.
There now, and there were Peter Wilkie out of Drumley. He was out of Bunnygee.
Right.
He worked for Daddy there now in the foundry. And Patsy Ward worked for
Patsy from Lower Main Street.
Patsy in the Main Street. And Mrs. Ward come at Daddy, would take him in to give him a wee knowledge or something of the going on. And because she didn't want them hanging about the head of the town, and Daddy said, you know, they're not much money. All they'll be getting for doing is messages, and he said you'll only be getting 10 bob a week, and that's what he got.
10 cents. I will suppose that 10 bob meant a lot that time.
Well,
10 bob note.
Yeah, well,
Margaret, sorry, I didn't want to ask you too much about your father's education there. You know, because.
But Daddy said he wasn't, I think what you call him, that man McAloon done something on him, and I think Niall McGinley done something on him. They have records of him anyway. He said he was sent up to Cork when he was 6 years of age over there, and he was herding cattle or something like that. That was, and then they come to Lismurnan in 1916. The father bought a wee bit of land or something there, a wee farm there at Lismurnan. Them times you understand what happened.
Yeah.
Like they hadn't the money and anything like that there now, you know, and they were just sometimes hard times too as well as everybody else there now in the town there.
Margaret, see in your time the fair day, there's no renting people, that was well done. You'd hire young children to work for you. Was that there in your time, was it, Margaret?
No, it would have been my daddy and mommy's time, but they would have got people there, the McDermotts and stuff. You would have got them from maybe £8 a week or something like that, say for looking after us children or doing a bit of housework or something like that there now. Daddy said he was taken to the Margaret Square, and they were what do you call it, they were hired out for 6 months.
Aye.
And the mother would have had the money lifted of it, so they had to stay the 6 months.
Right.
And he said he was out with the Haggertys out of Ballymaloe, and he was out there for 6 months. But he said he wasn't able to. He said he wasn't able to put on the harness on the horse's head, and your man just pulled him by the ear, and he says he got him up in a barrel, and he said, "You learn to put on the thing on the horse, the winkers and all like that, and the harness on the thing, the colour on." And he said, "You learn," and he just done that to him, and he set him up on a bar or something, and he had to learn.
Because you were big working horses, you were big high horses.
Big Clydesdale horses.
Clydesdale horses.
Yeah. That had the colour on them, and they had a harness for the ropes and all like that, and all this nearly down their forehead.
That's right.
All them.
Well, they were massive horses. Like.
Yeah.
What age was your father then? Married, did he say? What age was your father?
Well, he was born in 1903. He was born on the 27th of January 1903.
Yeah, but when was it? What age was he when he was hired out to Haggertys? What age was he then, roughly?
What do you call it? He must have been, what do you call it? Would be maybe 12 or maybe something like that. 12 or 13 years of age, yeah.
Could you tell us a wee bit about Oatfield?
Well, in 1927, as I say, Mr. McKinney filled me in, Eamonn McKinney filled me in. He said they started the streets in 1927 there now up there, and they made the first streets, and there was an old shade was out at the back, and it was probably made of orange boxes, and the round black felt on it, and they had a hole, had a big hole for taking the steam out or whatever of the pot, the big pot that they had for making the streets in there now, and that the big there were a big hole in, and the hole went out to Callahan's field out there now,
Are they down there to that sort of what we would call a railway road down there?
I went out there where the part of the old ground was there now, over there now,
And then did they go from here to?
They left here. I don't know. It must have been 19. What do you call it? 19. They built the factory down at the new place. 1930. They built that.
Right.
And Johnny Boyce and Joe McNabb done some building in it.
Right.
They would have been from the town here.
Aye.
There now,
The McNabbs lived in Ardodonald.
Yes, Joe McNabb, he helped in the building of the new factory down at where the original one was there. Now, and Johnny Boyce was there as well.
Yeah.
Over there now,
Just
they
the corner.
put some kind of big stays in for holding up the sheeting of the tops,
Aye.
They put all them stays under some big stays up in there.
It'd be like sort of rafters, kind of.
Well, there's a big stays for holding the sheeting up, or the cannibal or whatever over over there, and then they put the things block work around that there now, But that was in the factory opened in 1937.
Right.
Over there. But I have the papers, and I have them somewhere around, and I'll give them to you. And it's all down in detail there now, the dates and everything you got there.
Right.
Now,
Thank you, Margaret.
I think it was August or something that opened in
Right.
1930.
Right.
But then Ira's father died a short time after that. There, maybe the end of 1930 or 1931. His father died. Ira's father died that time. Now you know.
God, he wasn't old.
Hey.
He wasn't old, Margaret.
Well, I don't know what age he was now. I couldn't tell you, but but then what do you call it? That that was another daughter of Ira. They were the ones who really started the sweets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They did start the sweets.
yeah. That he would have. I think he was born in 1911. He was born in that. No, you know.
But your father was a great man, Paddy, too, wasn't he?
Well, he had no education.
No, but this house here is 3 stories.
Aye.
This is a big house, so.
Aye.
And he bought this
bought
place
it for
in
£500.
in 1939, you say.
In 1939.
So what did Paddy start then? You said about the foundry. What
But
else?
he was in the coal. He must have had some of the wee books I can show them to you. In 1937, he worked at the coal, but then the war come on or something.
Aye.
But and then he was into buying turf and selling turf and coal and all like that.
Right.
But he seemed to be in the coal from 1937 up there now, you know.
When did they go into, buying land and all,
Well, he really didn't buy a big lot of land now when we were young. He took you took a year's rent, you know. You took it in the month of November, you had it to the end of October. You know, that way, what would you call that?
So Paddy rented it out for a year? Leased it out?
What would be you know what would the saying be for, it's auction. It was auction out for the year. It was really only, so many months in the year. There were 1 month always cut off, but anyway.
Oh, you could
11 months to the year.
It was out in posters in action.
Eh?
It was out in posters in action at 12 months, but when you got it, you only got 11 months.
Yeah. Well, he took a lot of that land. He took the land out of John Robinson for the cows of there. That was out where the IT is. He took that there always in nearly a couple of, when we were young, on a yearly basis, and then he took the field down at Eiley Lane for the cows, and that was on the same basis there now, you know.
Sorry, each of the cows there.
Yeah.
Did he went into cattle?
Oh, we had we had the cows here. We had cows in here, and we had the hay shed as well. We had 5 cows and maybe a wee calf or 2 there. We had that there. And Sir Curran had 20 cows up the lane from us there now, you know.
Well, what about the fair day? Did Paddy, the fair day in Letterkenny, Paddy go there and he would buy and sell?
He would have taken some cattle, whatever, few cattle. He would have taken cattle for sale there now. And we were at school at the time, and we would have sat on the wall watching them haggling about selling the beast, and there would have been what do you call it? Sometimes they sold them, and then other times would walk away, and you're not getting there enough and all like this. That was going on. We watched them at school from the nuns' school there now beside the Poker House.
So they used to batter the hands off each other.
That's right. Yeah.
No, the bidding.
That's right. Yeah.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
But Paddy's a very interesting man, you know. Look at all the things that he had.
But he had no education, but he had great knowledge, and he was a good judge of cattle, and he was he had seemed to have a good way with him there, you know, that way.
Aye.
But he depended a lot on the staff like Per Gallagher and maybe Francie McMonigal that carried coal and Paddy Devine and all them, but he depended a lot on them to help him along.
Aye. Well, there was a man from Ballymacoon.
Jimmy Geordie.
James Geordie.
He was a big captain. He worked in the foundry too as well. He worked in the foundry for him first.
But he was at the coal lorry for years.
He was with Charlie, along with Charlie for years. It was very good. It was very good to Charlie.
So then, when you moved into this big house and Paddy had three a family, him and his wife got rest. So then, what did you say? Did you rent some of the part of the house?
Well, that is the way he told me. But he rented the shop, and that was chess screens. And Ballymacoon bought it, or took it for 10 bob a week. The shop, and he rented these rooms for whatever it was, whether it was 10 bob or £1 a week, and he rented the upstairs to. Sean Rooster's upstairs, I think, for a year or something like that. There, he was up there and then after that, Mrs. Higgity came in from Glenswilly just a year or so before, or a year and a half before my mammy died, and she kept boarders and all like that there. Now you know, and made dinners. And all. Yeah.
So, but you were saying the chess screens now, where did they come in? Like
they come from Ballymacoon, but they rented the shop. It was a grocery shop at one time. But as I say now, I would say it wasn't, what you call it, sometimes there used to be wee rats or, you know, with an old house. It was.
Well, Margaret, roughly, what year was that? Roughly a day at a shop?
Well, the shop was... the shop was going probably from, I would say, maybe not what I would maybe, it was probably maybe in 1945, and it was going up until Daddy took over they closed up and went away anyway, the chess screens, and no, they didn't, I think, because Mrs. Chesgreen then, she moved down to the main street, you know, where the old post office was.
That's right,
She was a connection there now, of the Chesgreens.
Yeah.
There now, you know.
Chesgreens over there.
There now, you know, up there.
I know where they beside the old post office.
Yes, she had a place there. Now she used to do, I think she used to do, what you call it, teas and stuff, and maybe kept people, boarders as well. There now, you know.
Was a man who worked in the IWS. That's the Mollies now, the IWS.
That's right, it's called,
That's Oliver Plunkett Road. Well, there, the EWS was there, and I remember people who worked there said they used to get these chess screens for their tea.
Yes, up there, yeah.
Would you remember, what did they call this shop out here, Margaret, when they opened chess screens opened up?
Well, what you call it, when Daddy took it over, he put there was some accountant, Liam O'Doherty, that was very great with him, and he put down Swilly Drapery stores when Peg and Mary Doherty was doing it now, you know. The Swilly Drapery stores.
Swilly Drapery stores?
Yeah. He said there was some connection to the Swilly, that he took that out of the name, but then we put up the Tinney's then later on.
Later on, you put
up now, you
know.
Well,
Margaret, who did you rent the rooms out to? Because the size of this house, like.
Well, as I say, Mrs. Higgity, Andy Higgity's aunt, she came in from Glenswilly, and she had taken from probably 1947 or 1948. She came in, and she had the big part of the house. The top part was mostly lecture hall there, you know, and then as say. what do you call it? But the Sweeneys would have left here probably in 19. They probably left in 1947. I'd say.
Was that Sweeney's from Ardadon?
Aye, yeah.
So they lived here too, Margaret?
They lived here in these 2 rooms.
Right, aye.
That's 2 rooms.
Yeah.
There,
was that Hughie Sweeney, the bus?
He was a bus conductor.
Bus conductor, aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
And that McBride man used to.
Yeah.
McBride man drove the bus, and he was a conductor.
That's right. He drove.
Yeah.
McBride man drove the bus.
Aye.
And there were kind of neighbours too in Ardadon.
The McBride man would have lived up at the top.
Yeah.
He was down in the lower Ardadon. The Second World War started in 1939.
At 1939.
It started, I think, the day Daddy and Mommy got married on the 2nd of September.
Aye.
2nd of September 1939. That's when the Second World War started. And then it was on till, but in 43 or 43 it kind of ended.
I think it went a wee bit later than that because the house was built in Ardadon was up in 1944. And they nicknamed Ardadon the Burmer.
Aye.
You know, and that had something to do.
Aye. Yeah, well, I was there from the nun school.
Aye.
We were a garden honour, and the blessing of them houses was done from O'Kane's house in Ardadon.
Yeah, Patrick O'Kane.
Aye. The blessing of them houses was done from there.
Who done that? What was it, the bishop?
Oh, well, I just can't remember now, but we were there as children to form a guard honour, and we were all over from the lower Ardadon on up to the near McMahon village.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah.
So then you had the Sweeneys, and then they got a house in Ardadon. Anybody else here at that time, Margaret?
What do you call it? No, they would have been. They were. Jack Perry come in after that. He was a brother-in-law, Father Freels, that used to be in the town.
Father Only Freels?
Yeah. He was a brother-in-law.
Oh, right.
And he was a Jack Perry, but he taught out in Dromahal.
Right.
Yeah, and he had a bicycle, and he cycled out there.
Well, do you remember there was a master ferry in Letterkenny?
Yeah, no, but he was a different. He was married to one of the Halpins, and up in Car.
That's right, Auntie Halpin's sister.
And they lived out at Ballyraid, or I don't know where they lived before, but in the later years they lived in Ballyraid.
Aye. Well, then of course, Paddy, with all the work that he was doing, he also had 3 a family.
Yeah.
To rear.
Yeah.
And then his wife died young.
Well, Mammy died in 1950, but then I say we were very lucky. We had my aunt that was in Port Arlington, down in Offaly, come and reared us.
Who was she?
She was Teresa Gallagher.
Right.
Yeah.
So was she your mother's sister?
I said, my Mammy's sister, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Aye.
But otherwise we were going to be separated there. Charlie was going to Cork, and Eddie was going out to Curran, and I was going to Drumkeen.
God, it's, you know, those times of then was hard too, weren't they?
But there were more families than us suffered that there.
But didn't your father do great? Like, you know, he held
well, they
together.
probably wouldn't have done so good only for the help he got from a lot of people that worked for him, and the aunt coming and helping him. That it wouldn't have been so good. It wouldn't have been doing so good.
No.
Now, you know.
But still not, you know.
It would be too hard. Now, you know.
Yeah, but still not. He's done great, like, you know. And
well,
they ended up with success.
And other people helping us along.
Yeah.
Just Daddy couldn't have done it all on his own.
Yeah. But he ended up a successful businessman, like.
Well, he did.
And then he passed it on to you and Eddie and Charlie.
You
had a drapery shop out here.
He done his best there. He worked all right, and but it was all the good people that helped him along.
Aye.
There, you know.
down through the years and all. Well, Margaret, do you remember Phil McLaughlin?
Yes, I do remember it. And what you call it, you got from the Port Road up to the High Road. There were steps there, and you got from the Port Road up to the High Road. But there,
that's true. It's still there.
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
Well, then, you know, we're across three houses now, like.
Yeah.
There was Riley's, the barbers.
That's right, yeah.
Who else was
and
there?
There were nearly 10. They used to have a sweet shop, and they had an ice cream place there, you know, over there. You know.
Well, you see, later years, was there a man by the name of Jack Harkin?
Jack Harkin. But Jack Harkin had a shop down here, down the Port Road.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
Aye.
The only ones I can remember go after O'Reilly's was the Greasy Coil, went to the top part of that house,
right.
You know.
Aye.
She had taken her let, or maybe she owned it, I don't know.
Well, do you remember, was there a Tommy Tinney man?
Tommy Tinney, he would have, they called it nearly tents or something
right.
At one time. But they done ice cream and sweets or something.
Aye.
And they're there, you know.
Aye. So then if you're doing this side of the street from your house here up to the
but we done it all there about a week ago or two at the Bear the Latin itself.
But who can you remember here? No, who in your can you remember from here now to the courthouse?
I have a list. And as I say, at one time in our house here, there were 13 or 14 of us, but that was between Mrs. Higgidy's boarders and ourselves and that there. 10 different ones. Altogether, I'd say there were at least 30 or 40 people passed through from the time she went to the time she left to go down, I think, to Kathleen McDevlin in 1980. There would have been at least 40 to 50 people in and out the house. We have the names all down.
Oh, you have it all down?
Yeah,
There'll be a lot of people.
Yeah, up there. And you know, another one stayed in the house was May Doherty. You know, Barney Doherty's wife. She stayed up here in the house.
So she worked in the ESB?
Yeah, and she stayed with Mrs. Higgidy. Mrs. Higgidy, she kept boarders. And so I forget, maybe some of them telling what she paid in digs, but I don't know whether it was a pound or maybe something for a week's digs.
Imagine for a week's pound. Suppose a pound was a lot of money then.
Well, I don't know what the pound was like over there.
So then the big buildings you had in the town then was McCarry's Hotel.
Aye. And Gallagher's Hotel. Over there now, you know, you know.
Was it yourself and Callahan's? Did Callahan sell milk?
They did. We sold the milk there. Patsy Callahan, as they took milk up on a bicycle and a wee steel seat up to the college twice a day.
Right.
And it whirled it from here up to the college. And done that in the evening too as well.
Right. So the people called to your house or you took it to their house?
Sometimes we delivered milk around the houses there. Now, you know, maybe to the middle of town. Callahan's went all down to the market square. They went to Woolley Malted. We were with them sometimes. There now, you know.
That's
right. Now, you know.
And you had a man was there before the Ulster Bank, his house down the Port Road there, Kenneth Curry.
Oh yeah, up there, up there. Well, he had the shop at the Market Square. He had a grocery shop and I think sold Wellingtons and some other stuff as well.
And he went into electric and TVs and all that was...
that was the big thing then,
Yeah, I think it was around 1960 or something.
Well, his wife's still alive there now.
Down here?
She's down there in the house there.
I think that's next door to the old ESB.
That's right, yeah.
Well, listen, Margaret, it was lovely talking to you.
It was nice, all right there now,
The best of health to you, Margaret.
Well, thanks very, very much for you now.
Well, Eamonn, You came to Letterkenny in 1973. So did you open up your practice then?
Yeah, I opened up my practice here in Lower Main Street.
Aye.
I went to the premises of the Crumlishes at 62 Lower Main Street. And then from there I carried on down onto the Shanahan's, near Shanahan's house there at 56. And around about somewhere about 76, 77, I bought my own premises over on the left hand side at 100 Lower Main Street. And that's where I started my practice in the Lower Main Street area. And at that particular time, Johnny, you see, there wouldn't have been the same volume of cars or transport.
Yeah.
So I moved out to different parts of Donegal, and a lot of this would have been due really to doctors in these areas who would have phoned me up and to see was there any possibility I might go out to their area as well.
Yeah.
And some of those doctors, and I greatly appreciate the help they gave me, would have organised premises for me at pharmacies or maybe hotels or whatever the case may be. And overall, as the time went on, I was travelling from Carndonagh to Bundoran. I had a practice there, and I was going to from Arnmore Island to Ballybofey.
You must have had a lot of practices around.
I had a lot. I had 14 practices in all in the earlier days, and I decided at the stage then that it was getting too much for me, and I intended to go back to Glasgow where I trained in the Victoria Chiropody College, and I was speaking to the principal there, and I said to him, maybe there's a possibility that I could get maybe a couple of chiropodists to come in with me.
Yeah.
And he gave me a bit of advice, and he said, what you'll do, he says, go home to Ireland. And he said, do what you can do and leave it at that. So at that stage, that would have been the early 80s, I discontinued going to a number of these clinics, and I rationalised my practice. And I just went to about 5 or 6 outstanding ones. And as far north I travelled was Buncrana, and as far south I went was over to Donegal town, and I still continued with a couple of my clinics in East Donegal and West Donegal, and then of course the main one in Letterkenny.
Yeah.
And I would have to pay tribute to all the people who supported me over the years, the clients coming to me and the people who provided accommodations for me, and their houses or their hotels or their pharmacies, or and sometimes in a doctor's clinic.
But you had a good name, and you were well known, you see, all over the county.
Well, I got to know so many people, and I'd known a good few before I ever left. But again, that was a factor, all right. It was very important. And it was just getting out and meeting people in the community. And as you know yourself, John, I love to meet folk and get into conversation with them. And I didn't find it any great problem from there on in. I was able to carry on my practice and meet them, people coming, and that was the situation. And the same would apply in Letterkenny. Letterkenny was beginning to move at that time as well. There was a lot of very fine old business people in the town, and people who I had known before I went away, and they were a great help as well and a great asset to me. And they were coming to me as clients, as patients, or whatever you wish to call, and this was another great advantage. So that's where I found Letterkenny. I could have went to Dublin, I could have went to Derry, I could have went anywhere after I trained in Glasgow, but I decided to come to Letterkenny. As you know, Grace is from Letterkenny. She was born and reared in Church Lane. Went then, our family went to live in Ardonal, and again we decided when the children were a bit small, we'd head here to Letterkenny so they could go to school here in the town.
Well, she was well known. The family was well known in the town too.
Yes, the McCaffrey family, big family and all, and they'd all moved away, and she was a nurse in Dublin in her time, and then before we went to Glasgow. So she was well known too, and that was another advantage.
It was a big help too,
Big help, of course, And it was something as well as it was only kind of starting off at the time. Foot care was taken seriously,
Aye.
and I think that was another reason why it took off. And as I said again, by various people from different parts of the county,
Aye.
who then got to know we had a practice in Letterkenny, decided then to invite us to other parts of Donegal, and that was one. Yes,
But the thing about you just listening there, you know, when you came to Letterkenny, you got involved with the community.
Yeah, yes, yes, that's
and yes,
true
I suppose
enough.
you went into committees as well, did you?
Yes, we would have a wee bit of background playing a bit of football and all that.
Aye.
But then, of course, we got involved in community work. I remember I was a founder member of the Multiple Sclerosis Society here in Donegal. Our first meeting was in 1980, and this lad from West Donegal, who had formed a branch in County Roscommon called Conall Shovelin, he invited a group of folk to come to a meeting in the Golden Grill. So I went along with a few more from Letterkenny, to the Kelly girls, Anne and Philomena out here from New Mills, I'm sure you know them, and two men from Lifford, Danny McNamee and John Joe McKay, and an Anne Griffin from Ballybuffet, and that was the creation of the MS Society in Donegal.
So you were the founder.
I was a founder member
You were a
of it.
founder
Yes.
member?
I am the first treasurer of it as well. And then shortly afterwards, another very active worker was Lawrence Blake.
Aye.
Lawrence got involved, and Maureen Harn and Catherine Hoy, they were nurses.
Aye.
Great advantage to us. And another lad from Annette Gallagher of Lower Main Street, a neighbour of my own,
Aye.
Cormac, who has just passed away, his wife. And then Sean Dunyan from Donegal town. And an Eamonn Tierney, the pharmacist over in Buncrana.
Aye.
They were all great workers, project workers, did an awful lot for the Donegal branch of the AMS Society at that time, when we only had around about, I think it was 47 people with AMS in Donegal. So that was the creation of the AMS. Well, of course, there were other committees as well we were involved in, and the big one to me was the Letterkenny Airport Company. Became
What year was that? Eamonn, you started?
The Letterkenny Airport Company was formed around about 74, and we had about 16 members.
Aye.
And we had one lady, one Boyce down from Boyce's here down on the station house.
Aye.
Where the station was down there.
The cafe down there.
Oh, Boyce, I suppose, were the cafe, that's right. And anyhow, we got going on that, and we put a big effort to see was there any possibility of getting an airport for Letterkenny. Our chairman was A.D. Kelly, and I was secretary. The second secretary, the first one, was a lady called Anne Kelly from Ramelton, and I took over around about 75, 76, and remained secretary for about 22 years.
Oh, there was a lot of work on that, Eamonn.
There was a lot of work in it at the time, and we had two excellent treasurers. We had John McCrossan, and we had Ian Stevenson out the road where the little airdrum is today.
Aye.
And of course, a very prominent person and a very active person was Dermot Walsh of the Carrigart
Hotel, yeah.
And we had a number of other men from the town who was very much involved, like Joe Dorian, like Tony Gallagher, the councillor Gallagher, and Andy Higgerty, and Leo Cullen, Clement Harvey, and people like that. It was a great committee we had at the time.
But it was very good of you, you know, because I suppose at that time people with AMS, they probably had to go to Dublin.
Oh yes. I
and
think,
not much information.
Yes, well, I'd say with multiple sclerosis, it was very prevalent in Donegal, Johnny, unfortunately. And we had high numbers here. Yeah. And it was to try and assist and help people. And we brought the experts from Dublin, like Dr. Martin, a neurologist, and people like that, to give these people assurance to see was there any possibility that maybe they'd get some easement from their condition. And we had excellent, and we got well supported by the business people here. Once, you know, we did a walk from Cork to Donegal for an MS patient, from the town hall in Cork, to build a house for a man. And we did a lot of work. It wasn't by myself, or it was just a group, as a group, collectively we did our best for people.
It wouldn't have been easy at that time to get funding either.
Funding was
it,
difficult. Getting back to that, funding was difficult. We did church gate collections.
Aye.
And I will say a number of these clergy that I had known, maybe as patients of mine, I would maybe mention to them, and they would do collections for me. A few people I'd have to call mine was Father Tommy Doherty in Dunfanny. You had Father Arnold. You had people in Donegal, Father Anthony Arnold and Father Pather and Jared and people like that who were at the time who were very enthusiastic to help us. And we would have taken on a good bit of cash and that helped kept us going, and it supported the people and the patients and their families as best we could. We tried to keep as much in the county as possible. And I remember once Father Arnold saying to me, was there any possibility, he said, that maybe we could look at a situation where we could have a Cheshire home. So Lawrence Blake and Grace here and Lawrence as Mrs. as well, and Conal Shumlin and myself, Hennessy Bahola and County Mayo, to have a look at the Cheshire home there. So we did come back there from Mayo, and we had reported to Father Arnold, and he had a few of his parishioners who were patients there. I think that's one of the reasons why. And from there then we held a meeting in Jackson's Hotel one night to see was there any possibility that we could set up and get a Cheshire home here in Donegal. And the crowd was so large that night, and they had enough. We had to go to the school over in Stranraer to hold our meeting. And Pádraig McGinty, he was on the chair, and of course nobody could decide what they would do, what we should do. Some people thought selling tickets for this and that. And as I was the treasurer that night, I proposed that the MS branch would put £10,000. Pounds we're talking about at that time, Johnny. And the chairman revealed to the meeting that the MS in Donegal was going to put £10,000. And it took off. And there were other people who were great workers, like Mary Gillen, who's a Letterkenny lady here, and down from Lower Menzie, Mary McMenamin, and others got behind the campaign, and Frank Hannigan from Milford, and people from Fanet, and we got the whole thing up and running, and the health board, as far as I know then, provided the site, and now the Cheshire apartments are there for everyone.
It's a beautiful place.
So it's a beautiful place, and a lot of people are able to avail of it. They are surely, Johnny.
I went down one night to talk to a man. His name was Don K. O'Boy.
Oh, sure, I know Donald K.
A lovely man too. But the place was beautiful.
No doubt, it's a beautiful place. I've been on it and all.
Well, fair play to you, it's great credit.
Well, Conal Shumlin would have been very active here. Conal was the chairman, and I think Conal still remains on the committee as far as I know. But it's a beautiful building and a good location, and sure, this is what is really needed for disabled people and people who can avail of it. It's just brilliant altogether.
It is.
And the nursing staff is excellent there.
Everybody has a good word in that place.
A good word in it.
But God, you know, that was something to take on him.
It was a big undertaking for us in the MS, but when Conal revealed to the meeting that night, sort of, you could see the people had changed, because how on earth were you going to start to build something like that? And then, of course, there was grant aids available for it, and capitation grants and various things like that. But I didn't get much. I didn't get really involved in it at that. I was just in the business as the treasurer and tried to collect as much money here and there for our own organisation. But we did make a commitment of £10,000 to the Cheshire home. And that was what I don't
remember. It was something to take on all the same, wasn't it?
It was very, very big at the time. Very big at the time now. But Father Arnold, he was there that night of the meeting, and he was very proud that we had decided to do something at the end of the day. Because he had a number of his, as I said, his parishioners who were patients in the Cheshire home in Bahola over in Mayo. And here again, at least anyhow, there was a facility near home for them if they wanted to avail of it.
Yeah, well, where was Father Aaron? Where was he based?
Father Arnold was over in, he was in Fanet. He was in Massmount at that time.
Yeah,
And he was a brother of Father Anthony, who was well known over in Dromahal.
right.
And his brother Jared, the three of them were three priests.
Gee, I was thinking that I heard tell of a Father Aaron down there in Dromahal.
That's right, Father Anthony.
But that wasn't the same man, no?
No, not the same man. Father Anthony was a brother of
A brother.
Aye. These were three men that I would have known very well.
Aye.
They would have been natives of the Glenfinnan area.
Aye.
They had another brother called John Arnold. John was a rich collector in our area. And they had a sister called Bridget, and she was housekeeper to her uncle, a Father McGlinchey, up in the north. And he would have been, he had been an uncle of Bernard and Liam McGlinchey.
Aye.
Liam from Convey, where I'm
Aye.
from. I think it was up about Ahyarn or up there.
Aye.
But that family came from the Glenfinnan area.
Aye.
They came from the Glenfinnan area.
Well, it must be great today, man, when you drive past that place and you look at so caring for people in Donegal and the work that you done and the rest of the committee as well. Like.
Well, as I said again, I wouldn't have done a lot but
Yeah.
again, I made the decision that night when I seen that we were getting it very tough to decide what we were going to do and how we could accumulate funding for something of that magnitude.
Yeah.
And this was the story. This was the way it went. So I made the decision, and Con still talk about it. Just when I put it to him, will you stand up and declare that the MS Donegal branch is going to come up at 10,000?
A lot of money, yeah.
It was a lot of money, but I'm glad that it paid off.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it gets there to assist people who has AMS and other neurological conditions and has other problems.
Oh, it's great to have the age you say for people.
This is what it's all about at the end of the day, Johnny, is to give comfort to people,
to people
who are in need.
Who has got that?
Yes, that is right.
But you're telling me a wee bit one time, Eamonn, about the airport.
Oh, the airport, yes. When the airport committee was formed, there was always an airdrum there for a number of years out at Stevenson's Field. And Mr. Stevenson himself and maybe A.D. Kelly would have played an active part in the earlier days. But then whenever there was changes coming in the Department of Transport and Power, required licence for this and that, and things had to be registered, as you know, so we formed was called Letterkenny Airport Limited, a company, and we got up 16 members, and then we put together a plan more or less to see was any possibility that we could see is there any chance at all of getting an airport for the town. And that's how it all arrived at that, to see could we work on something to get an airport for Letterkenny. We felt that it was a very vital public utility. I still think that today. I think that's a part of our infrastructure that's missing. And missing badly here in Letterkenny, a town its size, which will become much, much bigger as time goes on, we know that. And it's the proper location, because it's just sitting in the heart of our county. It was when Sean Lamass came over as Taoiseach, and after Eamonn de Valera, a commission was set up to look at the possibility of setting up regional airports all over Ireland. And there was 2 sites here in Donegal that was identified that would be suitable for an airport. One was Port Hall in Lifford, and the other was Big Isle, Manor Cunningham. And it was from there then that ideas took off. We had a group of people who were all business folk in different ways, highly successful in their own rights, and had travelled a lot and seen how other parts of the world operated. And we then put our plan together, and we put pressure on all our politicians, from TDs, senators, county councillors and all, and we pressed very hard. And a by-election was called, and at that by-election Charles Haughey was Taoiseach at the time, and he made an announcement. Of course, I suppose it had to be a cabinet decision that Letterkenny was going to have an airport. So we rode in behind there on that one. because we had canvassed them all. We had been to the Doyle many times with many people. We had been to the Donegal County Council. We were running in times with obstacles in a way, because a lot of people thought this was far-fetched sort of stuff, you know. What are they on about?
Yeah.
But we could see a bigger picture right there,
Bigger picture.
you know.
Fastest growing town.
Oh, very fast growing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, today, like Letterkenny will not stop.
Yeah.
Letterkenny is still on the move. The population of this country is expanding and growing at a magnificent rate.
Yeah.
This area here of Letterkenny will require not only, you know, it'll be housing, and then the infrastructure that goes with that.
Yeah.
I mean, our decent roads,
Yeah.
our main road there from here to Lifford, like, it's very poor.
Yeah.
Needs to be upgraded, needs a motorway.
Yeah, definitely.
And it needs other things as well, and perhaps an airport. And I remember once sitting in here at a meeting with the people from Lifford, and I was telling them that they should, and never forget, that leave provisions for a rail link into the middle of the town.
Right.
You know, don't cut it off.
No.
I mean, you know, committees there was seconded onto this Donegal County Council Airport Committee. But getting back to the airport again, that was the way things went. But of course there were other external influences working against us.
Yeah.
We know that now. If the book was read, if you read the story that I gave to the Letterkenny Annual some years ago, and that was sad.
Yeah.
Because some people are only looking at their own parochial situations.
Yeah.
And where maybe they're hoping to get a vote or two.
Yeah.
And this happened, and the actual airport of Letterkenny became politicised. And when it became politicised, the decision was made to support Carrickfinn and Derry. And Donegal and Letterkenny was discarded.
That part of the county.
And it was for that reason, and that was to the disadvantage really of us all.
Yeah.
Of us all, Johnny.
Yeah. It's very sad, wasn't it?
It was sad to happen, and happen that way for the amount of work that was put into it.
Yeah.
We had no other option then just to disband our committee. We could do nothing more. We did all we could.
Yeah.
We worked pretty hard day and night.
Yeah.
We met all kinds of people, and at a stage here we had we could see if we had our airport we could be self-sufficient in about 5 years.
Yeah.
But some people may not know, at the time we were bringing in an aircraft maintenance company into Letterkenny. They had their clients as far away as Italy to maintain their planes. A.D. Kelly and Dermot Walsh and Ian Stevenson, who was also a member of the committee, they met with the Scandinavian airline with the possibility of training their pilots down in Big Isle.
Yeah.
That's before the EEC, what was known of, well, was as active as this today, was the EU now. And also we had looked at the possibility from an American company coming to fly freight in and out of Letterkenny to Europe. Mighty stuff altogether.
That would have been a big one.
We weren't thinking at all about, and I wouldn't cast any aspersions on either airports, either Carrickfinn, because it does serve a purpose for West Donegal and or Derry.
Yeah.
But where airports would be concerned, like, they'd be very limited.
Yeah.
We would be probably taking over the entire Big Isle, maybe within 10 years.
Yeah.
And the landowners down there, the Steele brothers, who sacrificed a good portion of their farm to facilitate an airport, were very enthusiastic and all for it. And the other 5 farmers who were down there, they had no objections either.
Yeah.
So probably today we would have been an airport all of Big Isle, and we could have managed tides and high seas. We could manage all those things because it was all more or less worked out on a plan.
Yeah. And you had the land, no?
The land is still there, still in Big Isle, what they bought. The airport was going to cost at the time 1.8 million in 1980. That's what it was going to cost at the time. And it was sitting, as you know yourself, the new road has been built there.
Yeah.
The roundabout, it's only a couple of 100 metres from the main road.
Yeah.
Everything was going according to plan.
Yeah.
But of course a decision was made, a political decision was made, and that was the end of it. And
Well, listen, Eamonn, you're a very interesting man, hey?
lovely
Talking to you.
well, thank you very much, John. Thank you very much.
You have a mouth of...
I don't know if that was any good to you.
That's very good. You have a mouth of stuff. God, hey. Now, you told me a few years ago, I didn't know it until then, that you were born on the Church Lane.
That's right, I was, Johnny, in 1950. I think my father and mother lived on the Port Road before, just after they got married, in a wee thatched house there.
Aye.
And then they moved up to the Church Lane, and that's where I was born in 1950. And funny enough, then my aunt lived in it after we left it. And Peggy Duffy was, Neil Duffy was born there. You know Neil Duffy, the roofer?
Aye.
He was born in that house as well. I'm not sure now, but I think Peggy was born maybe in Lisjack, but the Duffys, my aunt, lived in that house then afterwards, you know.
Aye.
But it was a quite nice wee spot then, you know, and you had, the neighbours were very good down there. You had the McCaffertys, which were very friendly with my mother, and there was a man called Goulburn, and there was McVeigh's there, and you had, who else was there? There was quite a few. You had a Mr. Coyle lived there, and you had Seamus Hoare's family lived there as well, and then there was the Currans. They lived in the Church Lane, John Curran and them as well. Like, you know,
They were the pepper men, weren't they?
He took the Pippers over, I think, after Johnny Boyce's. I think after.
But your family was related to Seamus Hoare people, weren't you?
Seamus was married to an aunt of mine.
Right.
My father's sister.
Aye. And then I heard a lot of stories about that man, God rest him, Barney Goulburn.
Barney Goulburn, and he had a brother. He was a postman as well.
Aye.
What his name was now? Geez, a long time ago. But he was a very nice man too. He was a postman, the other brother.
Aye.
But they lived there just below where McCafferty's lived there, where Jim Houston lived there. You know, there where the Rortys. The Rortys lived there, and then up. I remember one time then as well. The Devlins actually lived up there.
Aye, that's right.
Devlin moved in there.
Aye, they moved in there. So when did you go to Rosemount then?
I think it was about 1952, Johnny.
Aye.
And the house we got like was, I'll tell you who was reared in it, was Mick Duffy.
Aye.
That would be Father Duffy's father.
Aye.
He died, and then the council gave it to my father.
Aye.
And well, it was as far back as I can remember, you know, Johnny, like it was, you know, they were all, them houses were the exact same houses that you had out the row,
Aye.
Ballymacool there. They were the same structure, so 2 rooms, a kitchen, and that was it, you know, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen. Everything was done in the kitchen, really, like at that time.
Same as Ballymacool.
You know, till, you know, later years we built an extension on, 2 more rooms and a kitchen and a bathroom, you know.
Aye.
But that was in 1977, we you know, we put the extension on.
Would that Duffy man, would he be Father Hugh Duffy's grandfather?
I was, that's right.
Aye.
He kept cattle actually up the back. And he had a field there as well, close by, and probably that's why, you know, Father Duffy, his family now, there's a road there called after them, Duffy's Lane, you know.
Aye.
But they had a big, they had a big say, I suppose, like, and you know, the land down there, like, you know, they owned a good bit of land there, you know, at the time.
Well, Father Duffy's father, he was Mick too, wasn't he?
He was Mick Duffy, aye, that's right. Mick, nice man, lovely
so
man.
they were sort of reared on the Wallsteads.
Father Duffy was, aye.
On the main street, like just a wee bit off the main street.
That's right.
Near the EWS.
Aye, that's right, the Wallsteads they called it, aye.
But then when you got a couple of years and you went to school and all, the crack must have been good, you know, with the ones and Rosemount and all.
Oh, there was surely, you had 2 orchards there, and like all the young fellas like used to, you know, you had Desi Harkin, Tony Harkin, and John Barkley, and Hugh Prices and Joe Stevenson, Malachi Dillon, and you know the archers like would have been robbed like, you know, regularly, curries and foxes.
Aye.
You know, not foxes, knocks.
Knocks. Yeah, they
You know,
knocks.
and then there was a wee over in Duffy's Field. It was still there, like, you know.
Yeah.
There was a wee pig house there, and that's where we used to always store all the apples, like, you know, in a bit of straw there, you know. And then somebody would come always and steal them, like, you know. And then sometimes then if we got cooking apples, we used to sell them to Auntie Ward, and Mrs. Ward used to make apple tarts from, you know, from the cooking
From
apple.
the cooking now. But then the Harkins lived in the main street, like.
Aye, but their
they
sister,
they used to kind of.
Rosemount was
How
their
about-
sort of playground,
Aye.
like, you know.
There was a street league one time in the football out in the park, and
That's right.
they were sort of. Damn, I think they played with Hughes in the street league, like.
Desi did now. I don't
Aye.
know about Tony, but Desi did. I remember Desi scoring a great goal one time
Aye.
in the school leagues. James Larkin used to run it.
That's right. Aye.
And Desi, I don't know what team Desi played for, but I remember Desi had a pair of trousers anyway, and he had braces on them. And
Aye.
Desi stepped back just and pulled the braces and took the kick,
That way.
flying into the corner for the goal.
Aye.
But they had a sister, you see, married to Josie O'Donnell, and Josie lived in Rosemount. And they always came down to the sister Bida, a lovely woman.
Oh, yeah.
Lovely woman too.
That was the connection. So.
That was the connections. And I remember one time too, you know, the first people in Rosemount to have a television was the Prices, you see.
Aye.
And everybody used to get in to watch the Lone Ranger and different things. But this day Tony came in anyway, Tony Harkin.
Aye.
And Tony says, stay here, he says, and I'll talk to you in a minute.
Aye.
So Tony, anyway, his dad, anyway, old Joe Harkin, he had the bicycle shop.
Aye.
He had a some sort of a phone box out the back that he could actually contact the aeroplanes and intercept some of the talk on the aeroplanes.
Aye.
And anyway, Tony, we stayed there, and Tony, he interrupted the television and talked to us. Always remember that.
Oh, yeah. That.
I couldn't, you know, it's hard to believe, you know, in them days, like, you know.
But the fella had the bicycle shop.
He had the bicycle shop, but he was a very intelligent man.
Smart
like,
man.
He played the banjo as well. You would walk past the house and you would hear him playing the banjo, like, you know.
Aye.
He used to play over in Gallagher's Hotel, I think, as well, with some of the boys
Would be
there.
tours would come and things like that.
I think so. Joe, but lovely family.
Aye, they were very
lovely family. They
But
played
then-
the snooker too.
That's right, hey.
Tony was a good player.
Tony was a
Norman.
good player, aye.
I
Norman.
don't think Desi ever bothered much now, but Tony,
Well, I can't remember
Tony
that.
and Norman were fairly handy.
Can't remember Desi, but no, as you say, Tony and Norman were good.
And Desi went away very young too, you know.
Aye.
Desi worked in foodies, as you know yourself.
Aye. Aye, he's in Coventry now.
Aye, I think he had a pub there.
Aye.
I think he had a pub
That's the
there.
last I heard of him.
Aye. Then
So-
you remember the old bicycle that used to be sitting
Aye.
on there, like a man going around, like there wasn't many, you wouldn't have seen anything like that in them days, like much, you know. I think that was taken to England actually, but I think now it's with a relative down in Dunlow or somewhere down in the country.
You're right, aye.
Aye.
Aye, they have it down there, aye.
Aye.
That's where they have it. Because
But it was
a few years ago they had it in the Devlin Hall, you know.
that's right, it was on the window there, that's
Aye.
right.
That's where they had it
Aye.
on. But it was around that area somewhere, like. You know.
Aye.
But then they, you know, when, as I say, when you were finished school and all that, like you were telling me one time you went to work for
Houston's first after school. I used to work there in the evening and then a Saturday.
Aye.
And you do deliveries then, like, you know, and I remember I used to always go up to the man who taught me, Mr. McAnulty's house with his shopping on a Saturday, you know.
Aye.
And he was a lovely man, you know, lovely man. But we used to go around the town like on the bike.
Aye.
And I remember one day anyway, I was young and stupid, like, you know, I must have been about 9 or 10 at the time. But I was coming down the Burma anyway, the high Burma. And I was coming around the corner there at the bottom there, at where Toners used to live. And Jesus, anyway, I couldn't get around the corner. I was going too fast without a message bike. And up I went hit the curb over the front of the bike, and there was a a bin out, and my head hit the bin. And I remember Mrs. Free coming out and taking me into the house, and what do you call it? It would be Mrs. McGlynn in later years.
Aye.
She was Mrs. McGlynn from out the road. She helped clean the cut
Aye.
and put a plaster on me, and down I went to Houston's again, but I didn't want to tell anybody what happened.
What happened?
But
you got cleaned up and you're
I
okay.
got cleaned up, but I'll tell you, I had a sore head for a few days.
Funny you talk about the bicycle and messages and you were saying cycling up Glencairn, place like that. People wouldn't even know what that was now if you told them about that.
Well, I remember one time, Johnny, in Patterson's anyway, there was a man called Sir Anthony Weldon. He lived out there, way out there at, what would you call the place now? There's a name on it out there, where the school is out there, and what do you call the place? There's a name on it now, but it'll be out past the crossroads and on out there.
What
called?
direction?
What's the name? O'Donnell. What's it? O'Donnell? Something O'Donnell, is it? The name of that place? Rathdonnell.
Rathdonnell.
Rathdonnell. He had a big house out there, this Sir Anthony Weldon. He was an Englishman.
Aye.
And I remember him coming into Patterson's, you know, and he the first time ever I seen anybody paying, a man especially, paying with a purse. He had a purse, and he paid for his meat with a purse, you know. And I remember he had this sort of like, what would you call it, like a tweed jacket on him, and leather elbows in it.
Aye.
You know, a lovely man, big, tall, white-haired man.
Aye.
And I remember then I had to go out with meat out to his place anyway. And Jesus, when I got to the top of Glencairn there, just, you know, that was the end of the houses, like in them days.
Aye.
And I got frightened. I didn't know where to go then, like, and the further I went, the more frightened I got, because it was all isolated. There was no houses like up here then at that time. Maybe one dotted here and there, like, you know, but there was nobody on the road or much or anything. And I got out anyway to the crossroads then, and I must have asked somebody anyway, but I eventually got to the house anyway.
Aye.
And I remember going in, and there was two women anyway downstairs. There was a big cellar in the place and a big range, and I left but it was like going to Australia to me, like, at that time. I didn't think I was going to get back to the town again. It was that far out, like, at that time, you know, with a bike.
It was a long.
You know.
Rathdonnell, that house. That house is still standing.
I think there's some Gallagher man owns it now.
Somebody moved in
From the
there.
Burma there.
I've seen an old photo not so long ago.
One of the, I think, what do you call them, family at the bottom of the town there? You know,
The McElroys.
McElroy is married to this fellow that owns it, I think, Gallagher.
He's Gallagher, I'd say.
Aye. So, but that was the furthest ever I had to go on the bike now.
Aye.
And then the Wednesday at a half day, but Harry Patterson, he used to do chickens out at the house, at the back of the house, you see.
Aye.
And you had to go out there on the Wednesday, and Harry had, it was kind of really modern at that time, like a plucking machine and all, like, and the big trestles with all these chickens hanging on them, and Finlay Russell, he killed them.
Aye.
Like a wee pair of pliers into their mouth, like, you know, they would hang through a wee hole at the bottom, like, and the head would come down at the bottom, and he would just clip the head, you know. And that was, it would just bleed then to death, like, you know. And then they went into a boiler then, and then Harry then, he used to catch the two legs, like, and this thing with rubber spikes.
Aye.
He would hold it to that and pick all the feathers off, like, and then I would finish them off and hang them up, and Harry used to sell them in the shop, you see.
Harry's what of a character too, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a character, surely. Oh, aye. And Joe. Joe.
He was a butcher for a long time in the main street.
Oh, he was,
wasn't
surely, aye.
He ended up in and...
But I'll tell you a story about Finlay. Finlay was a lovely man, a lovely, good butcher too, you know.
Aye.
And one day Finlay was doing up the window. I was only about 12 or 13 at the time. I left school at 12, you know. And Finlay was doing up the window. He was very good at dressing the window up, you know. And anyway, he noticed this man looking in, you see. And we got anyway. He was telling me after I came back from being out doing deliveries, you see, the story. He was doing the window and this man was looking in anyway. And he looked out anyway. And who was it? But a man he had been in the war with. An Englishman. He had actually been in the war with this man, like on the boats. And he recognised Finlay. And came in to chat to him. You'd hardly imagine that would happen, like, you know.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Imagine, like Letterkenny was a wee small town, like then, and you never would imagine, like, somebody like it, you know, during the war years, like, you would meet them there.
Was that the last war, or was it Neil?
Aye, it was the last one, 44,
48 or something, aye. God, that was a good one, wasn't it?
Was a good one. Finally, he was hardly able to speak to me when I came back. He was that sort of shocked, you know. And Frankie Donaghy worked there too.
That's right, aye.
Frankie was a character.
He was a good butcher too, wasn't he?
Oh, good butcher, surely, aye. Aye.
But there was some crack then in the town too, Neil, wasn't there?
Oh, it was early to go. You know, remember Mickey Shields on a New Year's night? Mickey led the whole town round down one side and up the other. Ringing at all the bells on the doors, and then end up at the clock at the square. Mickey really was one of the greatest characters we had in the town. Like, you know, I don't think he ever got enough credit, like, because he was involved in a lot of things, like, you know, and one gentleman. One gentleman.
Mickey, God rest him, was in the committee of the youth club, you know.
Aye, surely. Him and Packy McHugh would have been very matey, and they led the procession going up and down.
That's right.
You'd be locked up now if you don't.
That was oil, you were singing the oil year out in the new year.
Oil year out, new year.
And an oil bin lid or something.
That's right, battering oil lids, that's right. Aye, that's right, Johnny.
Had you gotten to me and said?
And you'd ring some bells, I'll tell you, and I'll tell you some people didn't like it, you know.
Well, what would your memories be of, Neil, we'll say, from the Market Square to the head of the town, you know, we'll say you started down there, it was Mahoney's, wasn't it?
Mahoney's, that's right, and then Dillon's. That was the Lucky Seven, Dillon's, like, that was the bar, like, you know. And then you had McMonagle's wee shop, they sold clothes too, didn't they? And then you had the Knees. And then you had the Rainbow Bar. Mr. McGlinchey. And then you had but I just vaguely remember this. There was a what did you call that shop that was there, where McCullough's is. You remember the name of that shop, Johnny? Stewart's, was it?
Oh, aye, Stewart.
Stewart's. They sold all different kinds of stuff. That was before now McCullough's or any of them, you know. Stewart's.
And then I think up above that shop there was accountants opened up there.
And this side of it, between McGlinchey's. Between McGlinchey's and Stewart's. That's where Stuart McLaughlin was up the stairs. That's right. There was a door in there, up the stairs above them. That's right. And then you had Harris's then, the next one, and then you had Russia. Everybody went to Russia's for the sweets. And Andy used to remember Andy with a hat on him. Used to sit on the back. He would come out whenever Russia wasn't able to come out. And then you had Carberry's. Carberry's, Hannah Carberry and the sister as well. Like that was the Tyrconnell Bar.
That's right.
Known as the Tyrconnell Bar.
That was Hannah, God rest her.
Hannah was Hannah worked for the I think the social welfare.
She did.
But then you had Houston's then. Houston's was the next. I think actually when Jim Foodie came to the town, I think he had a room taken there somewhere in Houston's. I think he started off his tailor business, prefect tailoring. Somewhere there. I remember Houston's big room. I think somebody said he was in there now for a while.
He was
before he moved across the road. And then I worked in Houston's myself, as I was saying, you know. Old Dennis and young Dennis, and John, Elma, Jim, and the else?
Olive.
Olive, that's right. And then on a Sunday, God rest my father, he would have cycled out to Glenswilly to visit his mother and his sister.
Yeah.
And I would get the loan of Elma's bike to go out along with him on the bicycles.
Aye.
And we'd head out on a Sunday out to Glendowen or Brimnashammer and spend the day out there and then come back in then maybe about 8 or so in the evening, you know. Maybe visit Temple Douglas, like where I have a brother, he died at 10 months old.
Aye.
He was buried in Temple Douglas, you know, along with my grandfather, my father's father and mother,
Aye.
and sisters. They were buried out there in Temple Douglas, you know.
Aye.
But Mrs. Kelly was my father's, you know, Tony Kelly's mother.
Aye.
We used to visit her on a Sunday, you know,
Aye.
and out there in Glendowen.
There was a big connection of yours, wasn't there, Neil?
There was surely. There was a big. Well, my father had 3 brothers, Eugene, Jim, and Tony,
Aye.
and then he had 4 sisters. Two of them died very young, within 2 years of one another. One of them was 10 years old. And the other girl was 22. Within 2 years.
God, that was young. Neil.
And funny enough, like, you know, I remember hearing like years ago, like that my uncle Jim, like he went to England, but when my second sister, when the youngest one died at 10, my father, he was working for an old lady up on Church Hill at the time, and she had sheep, and she wasn't married, she was an old woman and she wasn't able to look after. So my father used to look after the farm for her, and he had sheep himself, and my uncle Jim came up to tell him that the sister had died, and he was heading off to England, and my father, he gave him the money to go to England. He had the money, he had a few sheep.
Aye.
And it was hard times, like, you know.
Times were hard then, weren't they?
So he never came back to settle. Like, he always come back on holidays. Like, you might have met him, Johnny, a few times with my father.
Aye.
But a lovely man too, you know. But he joined the army. He was in the British Army, like, and
Aye.
I got his medals actually after, you know, he died and that.
Aye. Well, that's nice.
But he went all over, and then he went back then to Turkey to work then, and after he left the army, then he went out to Turkey, and he worked out in Turkey for a while. He came back to London again, like, you know.
So he ended up in London, eh?
I was buried in London. Him and the wife. She was a Sligo woman, lovely woman too. She was a Sligo woman. And then there was Patsy, and Vera was Mrs. Kelly,
Aye.
and Maureen and Annie.
Aye.
That was the 2 girls died, you know. So there was a big crowd of them.
There was
you know.
a big crowd. So was it Patsy married Seamus Hoare?
Patsy was married to Seamus Hoare.
Aye.
I remember Seamus coming out we would go out there for holidays, you see, and
Aye.
help with the turf and the potatoes and that together.
Aye.
And we would all, me and Danny, usually me and Danny went out, you know.
Aye.
The school holidays, we stayed out there for the whole school holidays, you know.
Aye.
And Patsy worked in the office in the bacon factory at that time.
Aye.
And she would be getting the bus in and out, and we used to go down to meet her. You know, it was a good walk. It was about nearly a mile, like, from the bus stop at you know, down there where what do you call them, McLennan lads there. You know, what do you call it? Used to be a shop there, McConnell's shop, just there at the bus stop at the bottom of the school lane there. I don't know if you know where the old school was there, Johnny. You know, as you go up where Danny Gallagher lived and Prizes lived up there. But that was it was a good walk up, like. So Granny used to send us down to meet her. She would bring the battery for the radio up, and we would carry it up for her, you know.
Aye. So you done the paper run, you were telling me?
We worked for Johnny Boyce.
But everybody nearly done the paper run.
Everybody done the paper run. Aye.
Aye.
It was. You got to know a lot of people, like, you know, and but then, you know, you were only young. You didn't know. You hadn't what. You no sense. You didn't know what. You know, you just you got a couple of pound at the weekend and you give it to your mother, and that was it. You know, you done anything, like, you know.
Sure. It was threepence, 3 pennies for the Evening Press. Was it?
Something like that. Aye.
Then there was the Evening Herald.
That's right. Aye, sure. We took over the selling of that at one time. My father, he got the business of selling that.
Aye.
And then we used to sell that, and we used to actually, Russia used to keep the papers in the hallway for us.
Aye.
And we would pick them up in Russia's and go round the town with them. But it was a horrible old job, Johnny, you know. A horrible old job, like, you know, you're out wet and, you know, and it wasn't, you know, but at the time it was a few pound, like,
couple of pound,
you know.
I got a lot of sweets and rations and went to the
right.
cinema that night.
Aye, that's right.
Nearly everybody kind of done that at that time, wasn't it?
Aye.
There wasn't no much in the town then.
No, there was not.
A game of football or go to the cinema.
That's right. And then, you know, with the old snooker, like, that was in later years, like, I don't know, 12 or 13, you had the old snooker, like, and that was a great place to go, like, because there was a lot of older people there, and you know, you hear the stories about the town and years ago, and you know, you had the Daya, he'd be telling you stories, and Connell would be telling you stories, you know. And there'd be always somebody, like, you know, that'd be telling a story about the town you didn't know, you know.
But they would give you good advice too. Like.
Oh, sure, it was a great, that was better than any college, like, you know, to go in there. You learned manners as well, because you couldn't misbehave.
No.
Johnny was, you know, kept everybody under control.
Johnny Duffy got arrested.
Johnny was a great man, like,
and
you know.
Connell was a nice
gentleman.
And you had Dan too, like
Dan
McGlynn.
Sure.
The two of them, funny, there were two shoemakers.
Toots and Harry and
yeah,
sure
Toots was a real character too, wasn't he?
Toots was a tomboy. Toots used to wet the boards, like, all the time, like, you know, never, you know, you wouldn't, you know, there used to be some crack in Derry, you know, the crack of the boys, like, you know, they enjoyed the crack too, you know.
I was always watching the sport. Then wee Harry, you know, Harry Dean, like, came from Derry and he ended up a quartermaster in the army, and
that's right.
Look at the time that he gave to the wall too, you know.
And very honest and straight, you know. Like, everything was done, like, properly then, you know. It was you know, it was a pleasure to get in there, like, you know. And then we used to paint it ourselves and do wee bits and pieces, like, and then you know, Harry had the car and he took us, and me and you, Johnny, remember going to Derry, like, and when nobody had cars, like,
that's right.
Harry, like, would take us in, and the roads were bad then, like, you know. Remember one night we had to turn at Manor. It was that bad with the ice in the winter time. We had to turn back. The car was going all over the road, like, you know.
He was a great man, wasn't he? Hey?
But, you know, one thing the Derry fellas always appreciated was that we went in there during the troubles, and you know, we never let them down. We always took part in the, and it wasn't safe going in, like, with queues at that time, walking along the street, like, it was tricky enough.
It was,
you know.
God, it's an interesting life, did you? Well, listen, hey, good, nice talking.
I don't know what that's any good. You tell you what, but that's you know.
Great.
Hugo, you were born in the Church Lane.
I was indeed, yeah.
And you were reared then in the old town?
I was. My father and my mother had taken a shop of a family McGuinness's that had built the shop there about 1950, and it went up for sale in 53, and it didn't sell at the time, but my father took a lease on the shop, and then the family decided to go to America in the late 50s, and they offered it to my father as a kind of a first refusal, being that he was a sitting tenant. So he bought out the shop and the surrounding area around it at that time, you know. So we moved down there. I was about a year old when we moved to the old town. So it was kind of the only memory I have. I wouldn't have had any memories of the Church Lane, you know.
No, not growing up or nothing like that, no.
Yeah.
But you must have good memories about the old town.
Oh, I have. We had a shop. It was a kind of a family grocery shop of the time.
Aye.
And it was one of those shops you could get anything and everything in it and that, you know. And we would have, all the neighbours would have come into the shop, and you got to know the families and different people, and, you know, it was a great way of connecting with people in that sense, you know.
And it was a good time to have the shop because Ross Sully was only up a few years before that.
Ross Sully was only opened and the supermarkets hadn't come into town yet,
Oh.
you know. We're talking about 15 years before there was a supermarket, before Best's came on the other side, about 1972. So, you know, that obviously changed retail about Letterkenny, but it was a good time and a happy time, as I said. You know, it was. My father was one of those people who would have turned his hand to anything. You know, there was a time with 300 hens. We used to get jobs there in the evening, go out washing eggs and crating them and delivering them into my Auntie Mary's, Comerskis and Lower Main Street and the shop. And there was a time my father had, he had 7 or 8 sows at one stage, and they might have had litters of 14 or 15 piglets and that. And I remember going up to Pearson's up in Lismonaghan to get them serviced and all this. And sure, I didn't even know what it was all about, you know, the way they used to chat away, but there was an innocence to it. But, you know, and then in the shop too, you know, vegetable stuff were seasonal. If we ran out of it, then there was always people, you know, in the neighbourhood who were sowing, you know, things like turnips and cabbages and stuff. You might be sent up for a couple of dozen on a Saturday morning to keep the thing going and all. So you were well connected within the area at the time, you know.
And then you had all the Rock Hill area too.
We had Rockhill was going well at that stage, and the army barracks had taken over there. It was a busy time, and with the troubles in Northern Ireland, 69, 70 and that, and Rockhill became a very busy place. Yeah, a lot of people used to stop in for cigarettes or minerals or stuff past, and you got to know a lot of the soldiers from Rockhill, you know. Yeah, you did.
That was good. But could you tell us a bit about the bridge, Hugo? You just lived only a few yards
So the bridge
from
was
the bridge, didn't you?
The bridge was at the bottom of the garden, really. So we were aired in. My father used to always fish, and as my brothers would have fished as well on the bank of the river there. And it was one of those things, you know. We were always looking up at the bridge, you know, for we were on the bank of the river beside it, and that. But you know, of course, it stimulated a curiosity about how long the bridge was there and what the history of the bridge was. So it was one of those things I kind of would have delved into at various times, you know. There was always apparently a crossing there where the bridge is located now. There was always a crossing there at the old town, and that crossing seems to have been documented going way back. I would certainly believe it to have been the location of the Battle of Sulia, which was the Battle of Godfrey O'Donnell and the O'Neills at that time, and they fought a battle there in 1258. And the reason that I would say it was at that location was because there's only 3 fords that we know about on the River Swilly, and all 3 of them are known about, and it was either Farset Moor or Castle Solace. But the story of Godfrey O'Donnell being injured in battle and being carried home towards Garden, and they stopped at Conwell on the way out, would mean that it really had to be the location of the ford at the old town where the battle would have taken place, because there's nowhere else along the river unless it was out at Farset Moor. I think that was probably too far out.
It would have been too far out now.
So there was always a place to cross there, as been well documented in the past, and it was believed that the Dallin, or the standing stone that was behind Nee's house, was a marker for where the ford was, so that when people would be walking along the river, you could see the standing stone, and that was tell you the location of the ford for somebody to cross. Now the ford is also associated with other battles as well. That's where Shane O'Neill is reputed to have crossed after the Battle of Farset Moor in 1567, when Shane O'Neill was defeated there by the O'Donnells, and he fled along the riverbank until such times as he found somewhere to cross. And that place was later referred to as Ardtesi, but it was actually, you know, the only location it could have been really, when you narrow it down, was the crossing point there at the old town. But that would have changed somewhat when the plantation of Ulster kind of got underway. Patrick Crawford was granted the lands of where Letterkenny is now built, because that was in the barony of Kilmacrennan. The barony of Rafoe would have been planted 3 years earlier in 1608. The northern bank was 1611, and he didn't do very much with it. But it was only developed as a town after his time, really, and that's really down to George Marlborough, the person who's attributed with developing the town. And it is recorded that around 1620 he built a bridge there, because he was building what was considered to be a market town. He wanted to develop the town, and you could only develop a town if you had a way in and out of the town, and if the town was connected to the countryside around it. So it is believed that whereas the town, as recorded in Pinner's survey of 16, 18, 19, has been a town of about 40 houses built in stone, primarily for settler families. The idea of him developing the market town from there would have involved him, bridging the river, and it's believed that he constructed a bridge across the river at the old town at that location around 1620. Now, I have to say, that's not the bridge that we're looking at today. Now, we don't know whether the original bridge would have been stone or a wooden constructor at that particular time, but we believe that the current bridge dates from about 1720, and that's from the archaeological survey would have surveyed the area, and they would reckon, but with the design of the bridge, and in particular with the V profile of the breakwaters that's on the bridge, and that they would say that you're looking at about 1710 to 1730 time period, because there's other bridges constructed during that time with the very same design. And so they would reckon that the bridge that we have today is still from about 1720. It's still over 300 years old, you know what I mean, and it's been a phenomenal service, but it did connect the town of Letterkenny, and it was the main thoroughfare out of the town. There's no point in going to the town if you couldn't get out of it, and it was the bridge that connected the north of the county with the south of the county. Yeah. For all those people who were travelling in from the north and from the west, they had to cross that bridge out through the old town, and then it depended on where they wanted to go from there.
Well, when you're out through the old town, Hugh,
yeah,
you went on up by Lismonaghan.
You did, yeah. Or you went over what we call over Lake, but remember, Lake's a parish, it's not a town land, but we talk about going over Lake. When you got out to the junction at the old town there, the Lismonaghan road was the Dublin road. It's marked on the old maps, it was the Dublin road, and the road up by the Lake Cemetery was the Londonderry road, which is also marked on the old maps in the late 1600s, early 1700s. So the idea is that if you come into Letterkenny, you had to travel down the main street to the bottom of the town, you had to go out over the old town bridge, and you had to head out, as I said, either the Dublin road over Lismonaghan or the Londonderry road over Lake. Lake would take you out to Rossbracken, Manor, Newton, and on into Derry, whereas the Londonderry or the Dublin road over Lismonaghan would have taken you into Raphoe and Ballindrate, Lifford, and on to Dublin. So that was the two particular routes, you know. So it was, the bridge was an extremely important location at that particular time. It was the main road, so it was. And likewise, you know, even afterwards, when you consider, if you move forward to the 1680s, you had the Duke of Berwick, who was King James II's illegitimate son, would have taken a platoon of soldiers across the Old Town Bridge on his way from Stranraer to Rathmullen to engage with Kirk and his garrison at Rathmullen in 1888, and this was just before the Battle of the Boyne, you know, where the Duke of Berwick would have fought with his father James II, the Battle of Boyne. So it was important, you know.
There's a lot of history about that bridge.
There's a lot of people would have crossed that bridge, even at the Battle of Scarfullis out at Cornwall there, out beside Cornwall. I mean, it was important even during that battle in 1650, where Captain Fenwick would have taken a whole battalion of soldiers across there, whereas Sir Charles Coote would have amassed his army on the Rock Hill side, facing across, when Bishop Herbert brought his forces down off the hill on the opposite side. They were attacked by soldiers coming out on the Balmacool side where the town park is there, and they would have crossed the bridge and gone out along that side, which was blind to the soldiers that was on the other side at Cornwall. And when they came down off the hill, they were attacked there on the side and the flank, and that's what would have caused an awful lot of the damage to the also Confederate army at that particular battle. So yeah, the bridge was important. It was used in a number of different ways, and Yeah, a lot of people have crossed the bridge in their time.
Yeah, so it's amazing, you know. The people would hardly believe you when you would tell them that was the main road.
Yeah.
Letterkenny, if you're going to Dublin.
Yeah, and like that part along the Swilly was very prone to flooding at the time. And in 1776, the bridge that we have today was extended. There was money allocated, a grant made available from the Grand Jury in Lifford to extend the two sides of the bridge on both sides. And the whole and people often look at the bridge and wonder why it was such a long bridge. But the idea of that was to extend the bridge on both sides to keep the water from flooding the road, because it was the main road.
Yeah.
And that's why it was such a long bridge, you know. Yeah.
But so much history about the bridge and about the old town. But you never, it must have been neglected and all. You know.
Oh, it was. I suppose it was outside what we would know as the town boundary of Letterkenny, outside the urban district council in its time. And it certainly would have been an area that would have been neglected. I mean, you know, when you go back to the mid-1800s, you had a gas company there on Lower Main Street, and it supplied gas up the main street, Letterkenny, straight up to St Connell's. It lit St Connell's with gas and stuff. The gas never came out over the Old Town Bridge. It was like it was a different country entirely. There was no water mains ever came out there. There was no sewage came out there until the 1950s. You know, so it was an area that was neglected, and that neglect really would have started when Letterkenny introduced its first bypass, which today we know is the 4-lane traffic between, you know, the Polestar roundabout and the Clanree out there. That was Letterkenny's first bypass, and that would have come in the early 1800s. What you had was everybody would have come down through Letterkenny out through the Old Town. That was the main thoroughfare up until 1800. After 1800, there was need to develop a new way, a shorter way, if anything, to avoid the town of Letterkenny. So they actually improved the road, what we call the Port Road, from that roundabout out to the Port Bridge. They improved that road about 1902, 1903. We know that because they completely rebuilt that little bridge that's out there beside the accountants on the way out there. You know where the slip roaders coming out of Tesco now, the new slip road they made coming down there, just on the left hand side you'll see there's a burn along there and there's a river. That whole bridge was reconstructed in 1802, and then they built the road joining the old Ramelton Road to the Port Bridge across the Mount Erigal Hotel is there. That road was built in 1821. And that took people over the bridge at the Port Bridge. But from the Port Bridge out to where we call the Clanree roundabout out there now, where the Dry Arch was, that was really a dirt track. That's what it was. So they improved that road after 1800 to divert the traffic from coming into Letterkenny so that you could bypass Letterkenny. And when people started to bypass Letterkenny, the Old Town suffered. The traffic and all the people moving through the Old Town had suffered and became much more of a neglected area where there was no business, there's no footfall, no traffic moving through it and stuff, and it went into a decline by and large. I mean, I know, for example, during the famine years, if you look at the census of 1841, 1851, there was 189 people living in the Old Town in 1841, where there's about 2,100 living in Letterkenny. But if you go 10 years after that, which accounts for the years of the famine, you'll find that there's a 24% decrease in the population in the Old Town, but there's only a 10% decrease in the town of Letterkenny. You know, and it was hard to make a living in a rural area like that. And as I said, I know there's accounts from the 1830s and 1840s which would have talked about, or 1930s, 1940s would have talked about Letterkenny, the Old Town part of Letterkenny being a dilapidated and run down area, and one that was in bad need of, you know, some impetus, and that kind of happened really when they decided to build a whole new housing complex at Rossuli in the Old Town. Which opened in 1951, and then the Urban District Council extended the area of its boundary out to the Old Town in 1953, and that brought water, it brought the sewerage, it brought, you know, so many benefits with it that you know, and I suppose businesses started to develop in the old town. Then you had Nestle's factory, you had, you know, the model bakery factory, you had Gaeltech's factory, you had all that kind of industry that moved with it and that.
Yeah.
But that was all after the kind of services were supplied into the old town area. But up until 1953, up until 1950 really, it was a neglected and run down derelict area of Letterkenny.
So had the council kind of no power really?
The council, you see, the Urban District Council worked within their own area, and their own area stopped at the Old Town Bridge, and that was the problem. There was no money and there was no plan for across the bridge because it didn't come in under the Urban District area. Now it wasn't always that way, because the town commissioners back in 1894 was looking for a new cemetery for the people, for burial places of people in Letterkenny at the time, because there was Conwell at that time was getting full, Ahaninchin was pretty full, and there was major concerns about the Church of Ireland graveyard up there at that stage. The Department of Health at that stage had serious concerns about it, and they wanted the graveyard closed, so the town commissioners went looking for, you know, another graveyard site, and of course they ended up picking one in the old town. But that was in 1894, 1895, 1896, and they had it purchased, and the plans to make it into a cemetery before the urban district councils came in under the Local Government Act of 1898. And then it came under the remit of this new council, but that reconfigured the urban area and the area of their power, and so whereas the town commissioners didn't have the same restrictions, the urban district council now worked within a confined area, and it kind of left the old town area outside of that, you know. So yeah, it just.
Well, when did Lake open? Hugh?
Lake Cemetery has a very interesting history, because Lake Cemetery actually opened in 1898 for burials, and most people wouldn't realise that. They opened the very top part of it. The council would have spent a lot of money developing it as a graveyard. Now, when I say they opened it, they purchased it in 1897. They developed in 1898 and 1899. St Connell's Hospital, who at that stage was being funded by Donegal County Council, bought an adjoining plot area. So what you had was the Urban District Council plot, and you had St Connell's plot side by side. And in 1900 they decided to enclose the two plots in the one by building a wall around the entire plot. Now the council would have spent a lot of money in developing it at that stage. If you look at the Ordnance Survey map of 1903, if you look at it closely, you'll see Lake Graveyard is actually lined out in little rows, little pathways through it. It's all kind of sectioned out, and they were actually selling grave plots to people in Letterkenny at that time, and many families in Letterkenny would have bought grave plots, including the town clerk at the time, John G. Larkin. Now, what happened after that was, in 1903, St Connell's started to bury their dead in their adjoining graveyard, because the plot at St Connell's was now full. And when they started to bury their dead in the graveyard became associated with the burial place for St Connell's, because the two graveyard plots was enclosed in the one wall. And people from Letterkenny decided not to get buried in it, even after having bought plots in it. So when the families might have come to a stage where they needed a plot, they ended up going back out to Conwell and looking to extend Conwell graveyard. And so the graveyard in Lake became run down and neglected. The Urban District Council part of it, whereas the St Connell's part of it continued to bury their dead up there. People from the town, very few people ever went for burial up to Lake, and that continued up until the 1970s.
Yeah. Well, thank God,
quite incredible.
That's changed now.
Yeah, it has indeed. Yeah. The church didn't take it over until the late 70s. It was actually a a municipal graveyard, there was a multi-denominational graveyard. People were free to be buried from any religion or no religion. As I said, it was council owned, not church owned, up until the mid-1980s. Sorry, the 1970s, and that all changed. It was a run-down and neglected graveyard at that stage, and the council would have asked the Bishop of Refoe, the Catholic Bishop of Refoe, to take over the graveyard at that stage, and they came in and they took over the graveyard and started formally burying, and they spent a lot of money, in fairness, now doing up the graveyard,
Doing it up,
clean it up and clean it away all the briars and the trees and all that, you know.
Well, that was what helped the
it was
council
taken
too,
over
wasn't
again.
it?
Yeah, so it was a very different graveyard then to what it is now. But you know, people kind of talk about now the need for a multi-denominational kind of a graveyard for people of all religions and none, and that, and you know, it's a kind of hot topic at the moment as to finding location that's suitable for that. When you consider that Letterkenny had one for over 100 years, you know. And
some great stories.
There's plenty of scope to
some sad stories too, Hugh.
Oh, absolutely. But when you look at history, it's always a mixed bag.
Yeah. Well, listen, Hugo, lovely talking to you.
Thank you, Johnny.
And you have a great bit of history about the old town and the whole town, like.
Yeah.
Jean, you were born in the Port Road.
I was indeed, Johnny.
Nice part of the town.
I was indeed. I was actually born and reared in the Port Road, because back in the day, most births were home births, and I was delivered by Nurse Harkin, the famous midwife at the time, in 39 Port Road, just opposite the theatre. That's where my dad and mum lived there. They rented that house for the first 3 years of their marriage, and then we moved in a long, long way down the road, 59 Port Road, and that's where I lived until I got married in 1988. So,
yeah,
plenty of changes.
Plenty of changes, but you know, well, there was about 4 houses there together, terrace house, wasn't there?
Yeah, there were five houses there, 5 houses, and the one next to Sister Sarah's, it was Devine's that lived there.
Right.
I think his name was Dan Devine. We knew him as Mr. Devine. He was a cobbler, and his wife Ellen. She kept turkeys and hens out the back, which is hard to believe that would happen in the middle of Letterkenny. Then there was our house 59, and then there was Peoples's, and Mrs. Peoples lived there with her 3 daughters, Eileen and Breege and Moya. And then above that was Susie and Leo O'Connor's, and above that Hugo Dorian lived, and he was connected to Gallagher's Hotel in some way. I'm not exactly sure what way it was. So those 5 houses, and I think I was saying to you just before we started to record that our address was 59 Port Road, but we also had another address of 4 Ramelton Road. So I'm not sure if those houses there were the start of the Ramelton Road or not back in the day, but we did get a few letters whenever I was a child to 4 Ramelton Road as well as 59 Port Road. So,
so the letters went to the 2 houses?
Went to that's right, the 2 addresses.
Did you mention Leo O'Connor? Leo used to sing in the choir and all. And St Eunice Cathedral.
And he was in the pantomime with me too. I remember back in the early 80s, Ossie Bryson, he was the producer. We did Cinderella down in the community centre. It started in the early 80s that the pantomime was revived to try to raise funds for the community centre. And the first one was Robinson Crusoe, and the second one was Cinderella. So I was Cinderella, and Leo was Buttons. And we had a great time. There were great times now all together, and the pantomime went on there in the community centre for years before the Greenland Theatre was built.
Leo was a lovely man, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was great crack altogether.
But then you had a few shops in the Port Road, hadn't you? Like?
We had loads of shops in the Port Road. Now just down at the bottom of the Port Road we had O'Boyce's and Nan Murphy's just there at the corner. I suppose O'Boyce's was an institution for a long number of years. I remember old Mrs. Boyce, that's Noel's mother, was there, and then Noel and Bernie ran it until I suppose not so long ago. And then you had Nan Murphy's, and I remember going into Nan's to buy the Bunty and the Diana magazine. They were sort of girl magazines back in the day, and if you had it in order she'd keep it under the counter for you until you got in. She had a brother as well. I remember sort of a smallish sturdy man with glasses. I think his name was Jim, and they lived there, and there was a very low ceiling. Remember going in and they had a wee room they lived in round the back of the shop. Of course, you always got sweets there.
I think they had a wee bell or something, had they?
They had indeed.
I think that was her brother, all right. Well, Nan Murphy and Clerks in the Main Street, they always kept books and all, like, you know. We used to buy cowboy books when we were young, you know. I think it was 3D or something.
Yeah, and it was back in those days. It was all 3D pence and shillings and all the rest.
That's right. We cowboy books, and then we used to swap them with people in Ardodong and the Old Town. And, you know, I don't know if you ever done something like that. You know.
No, I never swapped them now. But I remember sort of reading. Then once you got a certain age, then maybe you were 12, you were allowed to buy a Jackie, because Nan considered that was a bit too advanced for an 8 to 10-year-old, like, you know. So, and then above that, then there was Advanced Tires, and then there was a garage where my father worked, and you had Bell's shop as well. It was another grocery shop. So I remember that. You were able to sort of buy your week's groceries, I suppose what you would call it, on tick, and you'd go up to Bell's, you go down to Boyce's and you had a book, and you'd get your half pound of butter or your loaf of bread or whatever, and then at the end of the week then Dad would go over and settle the account, but you were able to buy what you wanted during the week and then settled at the week. But when you're talking about Bell's, one of my great memories about Bell's was these tins of biscuits, and like loose biscuits like Marietta or Mikados and things like that. But at the very bottom of the boxes there were broken biscuits, and you used to be able to buy them cheaply, and you might be able to make broken biscuit cake or something like that. And you also got these pokes. I don't know if that's if people this day would know what a poke was, but it was like a piece of paper that was wound round in the shape of a cone. And you'd get these sweets called torpedoes. They were like little licorice sweets with an icing on them, and you would go over and you'd ask for a poke of sweets, and that might be threepence or whatever, but you bought them by the poke at that stage, you know. So good memories of those two shops.
But that's how the Old Town sort of done their shopping and all. They ran like a book, like, and then they got paid at the weekend. That's how it was.
A lot of shops did that too. Tinney's up the road now, they sold wool and I suppose clothes, and again that if you wanted to go up to get something, you would they would allow you to take it out and try it on and pay for it later. Like, you know, I suppose people were very trusting, and it mightn't just be the same nowadays. And just above us as well, we were talking before we went to start recording, was Rainey's. You were saying about your own memories of Rainey's, but as a child, Rainey's was an Aladdin's cave for children, because every November, around the end of November, they used to put brown paper on one of their windows, and you knew then that what Santa's toy shop was coming. And you'd be trying to peep in through the spaces in the brown paper to see what toys you could see, and then whenever it was removed, then you went up and you looked around and you made out your list for Santa, and generally Santa was pretty good and usually got what I wanted.
Well, see, as you moved up the Port Road, if you were coming up the Port Road on the right hand side, there were a few more shops here.
Yeah, I remember there was West's, and there was the Commercial Paper Company, and then just above Rainey's too on the other side you had Donnelly's, and you used to go up there for sweets too. And looking back at the prices, there was Perry crisps that you got for 2D, and a packet of Tato was 3D, and a bar of chocolate, a bar of Cadbury's milk chocolate was 60, like, you know. So you'd go up there to get your sweets as well. And then you had McGrath's paper shop, you had Jack's sweet shop, just above where the Masonic Hall was there.
Is that Jack Harkin?
It was Jack Harkin, wee Scotchman, with a Scotch accent. And
he used to tell you to sample a sweet.
Yeah, he was such a nice man. And then, of course, then you had McLaughlin's, the cobblers, there as well. And I said we mentioned Tinney's on the other side. And then you had I suppose what we would have called the old grill. That was where the Chinese is now. That was where Bernard opened the first grill, I think. And that was a wee bit before my time to go to the grill. But I have better memories of the one across the road.
That's where he opened it across. But there was another sweet shop up there. Was it Tommy Deany or something? There was
there was 3 sweet shops actually, because you had the cinema where the Jigsaw is and all there now. That was the old cinema, and beside that you had Boyce's. Jack Boyce had a sweet shop, and then you had Carberry's that had another sweet shop, and at the very top of the Port Road then you had Tommy Deanie, and you had Riley's barber shop. I think
Harry Riley.
Harry Riley. And on the other side too, you had Joe Harkin's wee bicycle shop with the wee moving bicycle. So there was lots of shops in the Port Road back then. Yeah.
But I remember going to we used to go down and we'd call on the Jack Harkins and get a sweet, sample, I'd say. And then we used to stand looking at the man on the bicycle before we'd go to the cinema. It was great entertainment. Wasn't it?
And the cinema was I think it was Tuesday and Thursdays that it was cheap, and I think it was one and six to get in those nights, and I think it's still cheap. I think it's cheaper still to get in on a Tuesday night at Century Cinemas, but Tuesday or Thursday you always get in for 1 and 6pence. And
now I remember going on a Monday night, and you wouldn't get in because we were too young. But you had to come back on a Tuesday night to get in. But they showed the same film again. That was good. I think the film on a Monday and Tuesday was the same.
Yeah. I think I'm just remembering that.
And I think Wednesday, and I think then Wednesday and Thursday, and then you had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They were different. But we used to go to a lot of matinees down there. Was there matinees going?
Yeah, there were matinees as well. Yeah. And I think the first film that I ever saw there was, because I went to school, I was born in the Port Road, but I went to school in the Port Road as well, in Bark Hall, where the Women's Centre is now. That was so I didn't have too far to go for that. But when Ben-Hur came out first, our school, our 5th and 6th class, went to see Ben-Hur in the cinema. So that was my first trip to the cinema. And the first film I saw in the cinema was Ben-Hur.
Very good film.
And I suppose it's quite long.
There was a lot went to school.
Yeah, there was, and again it was very primitive compared to today's standards. There was 2 classrooms and outside toilets, and outside toilets for the boys and outside toilets for the girls. And in one classroom you had junior infants, senior infants, first class and second class, and it was a Miss Cowan who later became a Mrs. Platt. She had connections in Manor. I think she married one of the Platts from Manor. She did the junior infants, she did the junior classes, and then there was a Master Park from down Marble Hill that did the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th class. And he used to travel every morning from Marble Hill to Letterkenny, even in the snow, and sometimes he'd be late because of the weather, and we would have to light the fire. There was coal there, we'd light the fire, and it was wooden floors and desks and inkwells and things like that, and there was the cane back then, so if you misbehaved now you'd get a slap. But they were very good teachers as well. And one memory I have of that was when our class would be out reading, that he would draw a line on the floor of chalk, and you weren't allowed to step over that line, or else you'd get some kind of punishment. And somebody told me afterwards that the expression "toe the line," if somebody has to toe the line, that comes from there, that you had to have your toes behind the line, and if you went over, you were in bother after that. So,
but just down below, you had Curly and Jack, hadn't you?
You had Curly and Jack, that's right, the Railway Tavern. I remember that, and we, John Ponsonby had a wee bicycle shop just there at the entrance of the back of Curly's, and there was a billboard just outside John Ponsonby's shop, and Danny Cullen, God rest him, used to put up the posters for all the dances and the Fiesta and wherever else there was. I suppose the Fiesta was only one that Devlin Hall too, maybe, I'm not too sure.
He was a lovely wee man.
Yeah, he was a lovely wee man, and then you had Curly and Jack in the Railway Tavern, and I suppose that was my dad's watering hole, and many's a story he had to tell about Jack and Curly. They were 2 humorous characters, to say the least.
They were, weren't they? Yeah, they used to. But there was a man there, was he McKenna or something? Was he Wally McKenna?
Wally McKeeman had a wee auto. McKeeman.
Yeah.
They lived out up Gortley. Wally McKeeman, and he worked in an auto spare shop. And before that, funny, I was down at the day centre there last Tuesday night for Care of the Aged. We were doing a wee tea for them, and I met a lady from Ardonal, Anna Conley. I think she'd be George.
Was she George McCutcheon's sister?
George McCutcheon's sister, and she was. She reminded me of Joan Macaulay's flower shop.
Yeah.
And she used to work in Joan Macaulay's flower shop, and I remember that.
Right.
And that would have been the last building just before the railway road.
Right.
And the railway road was just a derelict then.
Yeah.
And we would go for as children to get tadpoles for nature study.
Right.
And wasn't allowed to go like very far because it was sort of you were scared to go, I think, for the bogeyman or something like that back then when you were 9 or 10. And below, then the other side of that, you had Thompson's food store.
That's right.
And Johnson's hardware shop. And then you had the bacon factory lane.
Right.
And then you had Pendergast's and Patsy O'Neill's and Kelly's. There were some houses down there just before McLean's garage.
Was that Kelly's the butcher? Was it in the main street?
That was Paddy Kelly's, yes, and Nancy, yeah. And then you had and Patsy O'Neill. It would have been Nancy's brother,
Right.
and they're out of gone down to play with their children as
Right.
well. And I remember from the back of the house, you could hear the squeals of the pigs in the bacon factory, often on a summer's evening, like back then.
Yeah, you would have. The town was quieter, you see.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And I was saying to you too before we started to record that I remember that Callahan's had cows. Callahan's had lived up that wee lane where McLaughlin's had their home.
Callahan.
Yeah, and the cows would be marched up the Port Road about 5 or 6 o'clock for milking, and they would be marched down in the morning. They must have had fields down around the bacon factory somewhere.
Right.
And between the cows and the two-way traffic back then, the Port Road was a very different place. There were no traffic jams back then.
No, there was no.
Yeah.
What would your memories be of the bus station and all? You know?
The bus.
Old Devil, wasn't it?
Yeah, the bus station was basically the bus station behind that. It was just there was old buses and things like that. And once you passed Oatfield, you were really in the countryside. There was no Devil Road then. There was no Aldi, and no Tesco. And our shopping centre. So once you got to the bus station behind that, there was just old buses, and often gather blackberries for making jam and things like that. So
And Matt Patterson was the manager, wasn't he?
Matt Patterson, yeah, he was the station master. That's right.
And they had an ice cream place there, somewhere along there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there was a garage there as well that Willie Black would have worked in. Yes,
right,
that was Billy Black's father.
Used to ice the buses.
Yeah. And then on the other side of O'Boyce's Street, McMahon's garage. So there was quite a lot. There was McMahon's garage, there was the railway garage, there was McLean's garage, and then there was Macaulay's garage, where my father started off as an apprentice back in, I suppose, the 1930s. And he started off there as an apprentice mechanic at, I think, 2 and 6 a week.
Yeah.
And he worked there all his life. And when Macaulay's sold, it became British Leyland, and then it became PMPA. And it closed then, I suppose, in the early to mid 80s.
So did McLean and Macaulay's, did they move to where Benny Sweeney is now?
That's where their garage was, where Benny Sweeney's is now. That's right.
And then Benny, he bought it then, didn't he?
I'm not sure. I presume so, Johnny. Yeah.
You know, did they stop the business?
They stopped the business. They did. They stopped the business. And then when PMP closed, my father and a friend of his, Teddy Boyce from Ramelton, they set a wee garage behind our house, and they had their own clientele, maybe 10 or 12 customers that they would service cars for. And
yeah, busy enough, like?
Busy enough, yeah. I remember like he used to service my car, and the first computer car I got, I think it was a wee Corset, I think it was a 96 DL, but it was computerised, and he was so annoyed that he couldn't service the car because it was just beyond him with that, like it was all manual, like, you know.
But it was well known.
Oh yeah, he was.
And then after the garage closed, a lot of people would have come to him.
Yeah, that's right.
I know people around the town used to go to him. And then he was at the motorbikes as well.
Oh, the motorbikes, yeah.
So, you know, he was a mechanic in cars, and then he was a mechanic with motorbikes.
That's right.
You know, he'd always be getting work, like.
Yeah. He was well known for his interest in motorbikes. Now that suppose that stemmed from the 40s or long before I was born. He raced out in O'Donnell Park.
Right. But we were talking about the buses there, you know. There was, I got a photograph one time from a person. There were 2 taxis down at the bus stop, you know. And one of them was McConnell from the town somewhere, I just can't remember now. McClure's Terrace.
Oh, right. Now, there was a McConnell's there. There was Daisy McConnell
Yeah.
that married Blake there,
Yeah.
and it might be some relation of
Daisy's
him.
got a daughter working in Letterkenny.
That's right.
She's living in the north. And one of the years I done the calendar, I put up with 2 taxis. But the daughter got it and sent it to the mother.
Oh, very
So
good.
the daughter come back to me and says, that's my mother's father in that taxi
Oh,
there.
right.
But no, she didn't know who the other taxi man. You never heard who the other taxi man.
No.
That's all you had then, Jane. You know what to say in the town now. He was McConnell. I know there was another taxi man in the town by the name of Devlin now, but no, he wasn't down at the. It's a lovely coloured photo too. You know. So then after you left Barcall, Jane, secondary school, where did you go?
Secondary school, I went over to the Royal and Prior there, and I was there for 5 years, and then I went to Dublin for 4 years to do a degree in my HDIP, and came back to the Royal to teach then 4 years later, and I was there for 34 years until I retired. So
that's great, Jane.
yeah,
34 years.
34 years, yeah.
Were you always thinking about being a teacher?
Yeah, besides all the other things like, you know, hairdresser or nurse or whatever, I sort of always wanted to be a teacher, and I always wanted to go back to my old school to teach as well. And I suppose I got great inspiration from my French teacher, history teacher, and that was the subjects that I taught. Good. And then I did guidance then for a number of years before I retired as well. So it was it was funny going back to your old school again too with some of your old teachers there.
Well, some of your teachers there that taught you.
Yeah, they were all there, and even say, you know, the first years, whenever I was a leaving cert, when it was only 4 years. So I started teaching at 21, and I was teaching 16-year-old boys and girls at that stage. So there were 60-year-old men going around the town now that I taught. I'll not say who they are, but it was something I always wanted to do, and I loved it really, like, you know. And I said I retired a few years ago, but I was there for 34 years. Yeah. So.
Jane, thanks very much. Jane, lovely talking to you.
And lovely talking to you too, Johnny.
Thank you for all your stories. Hey?
Maybe you might take somebody down memory lane when they hear them.